Hey guys, welcome to this video where in the next 5 minutes or so we're going to take a look at stress. We're going to see what stress is, how it occurs, the effect it has on the body, and we're going to discuss this sort of notion that stress is actually good for us. So the first thing we need to talk about is where stress comes from. And if you've watched the video where I talk about the 3 different areas of the brain, we'll see that the oldest part of the brain, what we call the lizard brain or the reptilian part of the brain, that's responsible for putting us into this fight or flight mode. And here we see the autonomic nervous system, which is what's going on when we talk about this fight or flight. So in the green we can see the rest mode, the peaceful mode, the parasympathetic mode that they call it. And this is where everything's fine, there's no threat going on whatsoever, your breathing's fine, you've got constricted pupils, your heart rate is fine, your digestion, everything's great, no problem. As soon as your body and that lizard brain perceives a threat, a life or death situation, we're going to kick into this stress mode, this sympathetic side here, where stress mode is going to kick in, and we're going to release loads of hormones into the body. We're going to release adrenaline, cortisol. We're going to basically prepare the body for battle because it's life or death. As you can see, it dilates the pupils, it shuts down the digestion. All the blood is going to rush to your muscles, and you're going to have less blood in the brain, so you can't think straight when you've got this initial stress reaction. You know, that I think everybody can relate to that. So like, you're not thinking straight as it goes on. So we get into this stress mode here, and it has a huge effect on the body. Now that's fine. So if that happened once in a blue moon when you had a really life-threatening situation, that's not a problem. We can deal with that. Everybody's going to have to experience something like that at some point in their lives. The trouble is because we've got this neocortex that the animals don't have, or most of them don't have anyway. We imagine things that are stressful. We perceive things that are going to be going on in the future that are stressful. We think about things that have happened in the past and we perceive them to be stressful. Even though it's not a real threat right in front of us here and now, we are putting ourselves into this stress mode, into this fight or flight scenario for things that aren't even real. So we are literally fighting a war in our own heads all the time, and it's really, really dangerous for our bodies to be going through this stress reaction all the time. If you think about it, ideally you want to go through this stress reaction maybe once a year, where it's going to be very, very bad for your body. If you think about the health of your body, it's going to dip, and then once it's over and you've survived because you haven't been killed, the health of your body is going to start climbing back up again. Your body's going to heal itself. The cells are going to repair. You're going to divert energy to whatever needs to be healed, and you're going to come back up to an even keel. The trouble is that we live in stress mode all the time. Our health just goes downhill and downhill and downhill. And it's not just the health of our bodies; it's our mental health as well. Because if you may have noticed that we're only talking about 2 modes here. You're either in stress mode or you're not. There isn't another mode for anxiety, and there isn't another mode for depression, and there isn't another mode for worries and panics and phobias and fears. That you're either in stress mode or you're not. That's the autonomic nervous system. Everything's either fine or you're in this stress mode, and we're all living far too much in this stress mode. So the more we live in it, the more our health goes downhill, and what's going on internally and what's going through the mind, because we've got all these hormones going through our mind all the time, and a lot of them make us anxious. So the more we have, the more anxious we get, and it's because we're in stress mode too much. And that's why we're seeing so many people with anxiety. And the more it goes on, the further down and down and down we get. We don't have the energy anymore to function normally, and that's when we talk about depression. So where did we get this idea from that stress is a good thing for us? Of course it's a good thing that it helps us survive. I'm not saying it isn't, because we wouldn't have survived so long as a species if it weren't for this fight or flight reaction that we have, this stress mode. But when we talk about a little bit of stress is good for you, this comes from, if we look here, this chart here, the Yerkes-Dodson tests that were done back in 1908. I don't know if I'm saying that right, Yerkes-Dodson. These were tests that were done back in 1908, and as you can see here, this is the human performance curve, where, as we can see here, when we have no stress and we're calm and everything's nice, they've labelled that as boredom, and we'll explain why in a moment. Then the more stress that's applied, you can see here, it's just a normal bell-shaped curve, that performance goes up, and that right at the very top of the bell-shaped curve, we're seeing optimal performance, where it says there that they are energized, focused, works well, work feels effortless. Okay, but the more stress we have, we're going from stress into distress, where we talk about fatigue, exhaustion, ill health, and then this breakdown and burnout, which we can all imagine to be very true. So we can see there at the top, it's talking about optimal performance. And this is quite interesting. It says aim to keep employees at this performance level. So that can sort of give you a hint as to the motivation of this chart here. So the interesting thing is that this chart was produced by doing tests on mice in the laboratory, where what we call optimal performance and this level of arousal that they were testing the mice was basically giving them two options of doors to go through, and if they chose the wrong door, they'd get an electric shock. So there was an optimal level of electrocuting these mice that gave the best performance. The optimal performance was to just electrocute them just a little bit. But if you electrocute them too much, then they become exhausted, they go into ill health, and then they break down and they burn out. But if you don't electrocute them that strongly, they get bored and you don't really see that performance level. So we've built this fiction in our society that stress is good for you, based on this model that, you know, putting that pressure, which was based on electrocuting rats, gave performance. Now I know we're all saying, you know, I feel that when I've got a deadline to meet or something like that, I feel that stress, that motivation, and that helps me perform. I'm not arguing against that, but what I'm saying is that we can't see stress as a good thing, where we're placing ourselves into this stress mode with all the things that are going on internally are really, really bad for us. We can't see that as a good thing anymore. That's not a healthy way to live. We've got to get out of that. All the different things that come from living in that stress mode habitually and continuously produce so many chronic conditions of health. All the autoimmune things, it comes from the autonomous nervous system. So that's stress. So I hope you learned something there. I'd love to know what you think. Is stress a good thing or is it not? Do you manage your stress well? Let me know what you think about stress. How do you manage your stress? I'm really interested to know what sorts of things you do to help you cope with stress. Okay, thanks very much.